What happens when a nation, once the undisputed sun of the world, suddenly plunges into the dark of total chaos? This is the story of a kingdom's fall. How did a kingdom so rich in culture, military might, and glory fall to its knees and crumble into revolution, terror, and eventually a globe-shaking empire? Stay tuned as we dive into one of the most dramatic transformations in all of human history, the total and cataclysmic fall of France. In the 18th century, France was the uncontested powerhouse of Europe. It set the global stage for what seemed like an unshakable, eternal dominance. Under the rule of King Louis XIV, the Sun King, France became the very definition of centralized power, absolute monarchy, and unparalleled opulence. Under the long and absolute rule of King Louis XIV, the Sun King, France became the very definition of centralized power and royal opulence. His court set the standard for every other monarchy on the planet. But beneath this gilded exterior, the seeds of a future cataclysm were being sown. As the 18th century drew to a close, the simmering discontent of millions was about to erupt. France was heading toward a total collapse of its ancient order. A kingdom once synonymous with grandeur and military superiority was about to be torn apart by its own people and its own crushing debts. The truth was that the French monarchy was drowning in debt. The grand ambitions of the Sun King and his successor, Louis XV, had come at a staggering cost. The crown was effectively bankrupt. Decades of war, including support for the American Revolution, had pushed the treasury to its absolute limit. French society was rigid, divided into three estates. The first two, the clergy and the nobility, held all the power and paid virtually no taxes at all. The third estate, making up 98% of the population, carried the entire financial burden of the kingdom on their tired backs. By the mid-1700s, an intellectual tide called the Enlightenment was sweeping across Europe, challenging centuries-old monarchies and religious dogma. Thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau painted a vision of a society based on reason, equality, and the radical idea of a social contract between ruler and ruled. These weren't just abstract ideas. They were the fuel for a rebellion that would soon tear the very fabric of the French monarchy into pieces. When Louis XVI took the throne, he was well-intentioned but indecisive. He faced a crisis he was fundamentally ill-equipped to handle or even understand. He tried to reform the tax system, but the nobility blocked every attempt. The monarchy was paralyzed while the nation's hunger and anger grew. A series of bad harvests led to mass starvation. The price of bread skyrocketed, and for the common person, life became a desperate struggle for survival. While the people starved, the royals continued to live in luxury at Versailles. The disconnect between the crown and the people was now total. In a desperate move, Louis XVI called the Estates General in 1789, a gathering of representatives from all three estates that hadn't met in over 100 years. The meeting was a disaster. The Third Estate, tired of being outvoted by the nobility and clergy, broke away to form their own national assembly. Locked out of their meeting hall, they gathered at a nearby indoor tennis court and swore not to leave until they had given France a constitution. This was the tennis court oath. It was the first true act of revolution. The people were now claiming that they, not the king, were the source of power. Rumors spread that the king was gathering troops to crush the assembly. On July 14, 1789, the people of Paris took matters into their own hands. They stormed the Bastille, a medieval fortress and prison that served as a hated symbol of royal tyranny and absolute power. The fall of the Bastille sent shockwaves through the world. The revolution had begun, and there was no turning back for the House of Bourbon. The National Assembly soon issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. It was a landmark document for human freedom. It declared that all men were born free and equal in rights. The ancient privileges of the nobility were being dismantled by the stroke of a pen, but the peace and order the people sought would remain elusive. The revolution quickly began to spiral into something far more violent and radical. Factions within the revolution began to turn on each other. The quest for liberty was being replaced by a desperate, bloody fight for survival. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Maximilien Robespierre, instituted what would be known as the Reign of Terror. No one was safe. The guillotine became the symbol of this new revolutionary tyranny. Thousands, nobles and commoners alike, lost their heads in the name of the state. King Louis XIV was put on trial for treason. In January 1793, he was executed, officially bringing an end to the ancient monarchy. Marie Antoinette followed her husband to the guillotine soon after. The old world was being systematically destroyed, but what would take its place? In the ashes of this bloody chaos, a new force emerged. A brilliant young military commander from Corsica named Napoleon Bonaparte. He had already made a name for himself on the battlefield. He capitalized on the nation's disarray, promising the people order and stability. In 1799, Napoleon staged a coup d'etat, effectively seizing control of France and ending the chaotic rule of the Directory. He became first consul, centralizing power back into his own hands. The revolution was over, but Napoleon's own era was just beginning. Napoleon's ambitions knew no bounds. In 1804, in the Cathedral of Notre Dame, he crowned himself Emperor of the French. He took the crown from the hands of the Pope and placed it on his own head. He was now the absolute ruler of a new revolutionary empire. He modernized the state with the Napoleonic Code. It established a uniform system of laws that guaranteed equality before the law for all male citizens. This code still forms the foundation of legal systems across the globe today. It was perhaps Napoleon's most enduring and positive legacy. But Napoleon's vision wasn't just for France. He dreamed of a united Europe under French leadership. His grand army seemed unstoppable. From Spain to Poland, Napoleon's legions marched across the continent, dismantling the old monarchies and spreading French influence. At Austerlitz, Napoleon achieved his greatest victory, shattering the armies of the Russian and Austrian empires in a single day. He was now the master of Europe, but his constant wars and his thirst for glory were beginning to stretch the nation far too thin. The nations of Europe were not content to live under French rule. Britain, Russia, and Austria formed coalition after coalition to stop him. The British Royal Navy controlled the seas, effectively cutting off Napoleon's empire from the rest of the world. The pressure was mounting. In 1812, Napoleon made his most fatal mistake. He led an army of over 600,000 men into the vast heart of Russia. The campaign was a catastrophe. The Russian winter and the scorched earth tactics decimated the Grand Army. Fewer than 100,000 returned. Napoleon's aura of invincibility was gone. The nations of Europe saw their chance and united to drive him back across the Rhine. After a series of defeats, Napoleon was forced to abdicate in 1814. He was exiled to the small Mediterranean island of Elba. But Napoleon wasn't done yet. In 1815, he escaped and returned for the 100 Days, briefly reclaiming his throne as a hero to many. His final gamble ended at the Battle of Waterloo. Defeated by the Duke of Wellington and the Prussians, he was exiled again, this time for good. The Bourbon monarchy was restored, but France had been changed forever by the Revolution and Napoleon. There was no going back. The new kings found themselves ruling over a people who had tasted liberty and equality. The seeds of further change were already growing. In 1830, the people of Paris rose up again in the July Revolution, overthrowing the last of the direct Bourbon line, Charles X. They sought a constitutional monarchy under Louis XIV, the citizen king. But even this would not satisfy the people for long. In 1848, a wave of revolutions swept across Europe. In France, the monarchy was finally abolished for the second and last time. The French Second Republic was born, a step closer to modern democracy. But the journey to stability was still far from over. The Republic was short-lived. Napoleon's nephew, Louis Napoleon, was elected president and then crowned himself Emperor Napoleon III. He modernized the infrastructure of France and rebuilt Paris into the city of light we know today. But his empire would also end in defeat. The defeat of France in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 brought the final end of the empires and the birth of the Third Republic. The Third Republic would become the longest period of stability France had known since the original revolution began. France's industrial growth and imperial expansion marked the true beginning of the modern French state we recognize today. From the absolute power of Versailles to the modern stability of the Republic, France's journey has been forged in fire and upheaval. How did this kingdom transform? By embracing the very ideals of the revolution that once threatened to destroy it. France's legacy continues to shape our global understanding of liberty, equality, and the very nature of modern power. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the epic history of France, please like the video and subscribe to Mystery Decode for more. Comment below with your thoughts on how revolutions shape the destiny of nations. We want to hear from you. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new historical documentary from our team. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter of human history. Mystery Decode: Uncovering the Past.